the issue.
That was why last time too.
Good to know.
What's the
You're
matter?
not crazy,
Somebody
Debbie.
else started it?
Well, I guess when Jill joined in, she's.
Whenever, that's what happened like at church when we would do Zoom.
We're good.
If somebody else tried to host, if I logged in, it would switch to me because I had.
Thank you.
That's what happened last time.
Uh-huh.
2 weeks ago.
Live on YouTube. Sorry for the.
Good. If it screws up again, we'll just go on with the meeting. As long as you can get a recording or a voice recording.
Oh, do we need a? Okay, perfect. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the Rockwell Estates final plat for Rockwell Estates subdivision final plat approved.
Included in the packet, except for the staff report. We had a delay with that due to some staffing challenges.
Can you repeat the conditions again? I'm
The-
sorry.
The condition is that they provide the Mylars.
Okay.
It's
Yes.
correct.
So, right, and so this subdivision actually has 3 agreements that go with it. One is your standard escrow agreement, and that is they're escrowing for all the remaining improvements that are left to be installed, plus contingency and the guarantee money.
It's on the master or the.
It's going to go, into the general, basically the general stormwater fund for fixes. That one will be moved up. And I think immediately we're just going to move up another project. use some of this money to help pay for another project and then put that one next. But
You
where
could
there,
probably show,
And with the improvement,
That's okay, I mean,
it's, yeah, it's just,
but there is a detention basin before it gets into Barker Pond.
yes, yes, yep.
That's
It's
all
right
that-
there on 3000, just like 2 streets.
and it
it's
meets,
just where it's all where all the water from Tina's flows down by the trees.
Yeah.
It's gonna, yeah, that's where it's gonna go. About to get to.
Yes. So the third agreement is the protection strip agreement. And you guys should have a copy of the plat. And you can see there is, oh, you don't.
it looks wonky, but
So, yeah, the south half of the subdivision has a cul-de-sac that is adjacent to the Tina's property. The east side of that cul-de-sac road will have, they're asking for a protection strip. And we have put an evaluation to that protection strip. And what it does is it allows the developer to be paid back when the property adjacent to that cul-de-sac road on the east side develops.
kind of like up in Deer Crest.
Yes.
And so I have some
Yes.
real heartburn with this
Like
Yes.
paid back, explain please.
Beg your
It-
pardon?
Like for half the cost of the road?
because.
Yes, it is for half of the cost of the road.
Plus its interest, which was ridiculous.
But we modified that. I can't remember exactly. It's not a fair rate now. It is based off of the consumer price index, I think.
No, so it's
Federal-
IRS guidelines and there's another.
Federal Open Market Committee and Internal Revenue Service current interest rate averages
So this
that
is.
shall
to-
be negotiated between the developer and the adjacent property owners. And then it says plus 10% of the cost of improvements and land compounded annually that developer has owned the protection strip. I'm really, that language to me is really
That was,
got me a problem.
yeah, I.
Well, up here in Deer Crest, they ended up paying like 5 times the cost of what the road was to put in for the entire road for just their
Right.
their
Just
half.
for the
So this
protection
is to
strip.
have, so with the adjacent property that's not developed, and somebody comes in to want to develop there, they will have to pay then those property owners that own that property.
Because that road, all of the lots go just on
Sure.
this west side.
No,
That
no.
east side
Yeah,
where
we
they-
understand
No, I
why.
understand that, I'm just
Yeah,
I,
clarifying. We have
it makes,
this
it
in
makes
other
sense.
areas.
It's just that
the
it's,
interest part is.
well, yeah, like I said, when they went to build up there and had the same thing, because it had been 10 years or whatever, they ended up paying like 2 or 3 times what the cost for the developer to put the entire roadway in, just for that.
Laterals in right now, they'd
Yeah.
save thousands and thousands of dollars.
But-
Just put the laterals in.
Yeah.
Now they're gonna have to.
Yeah,
pay in-
yeah.
Oh, it's just gonna be a nightmare, but.
There's like a ceiling on it, but the previous sentence tells you what to base that interest
Okay,
rate on.
shall the reimbursement exceed the initial cost of improvements and land as set forth in plus 10% of the cost of improvements and compounded annually the developer has owned. So is it 10% per year? It's not to exceed
Yeah, 10%
per year?
compounded. I think that it's
And that's the
compounded annually.
maximum, and then it's based on those federal guidelines.
Oh, wait, so the maximum is 10% a year.
Page 2 of the front.
Yes,
Yes.
y- yes.
That's terrible.
Well, that is, no, but that is just in no case, like if inflation were to go up to 15%. It's based off
Still
of.
have. Oh. I just don't think they should be making money on the deal. It should be up to cost. There should be a maximum cost of half the road. their money and they're putting it in now, but guess what? It's their money and they're putting it in now.
But they may have a loan on that money that they're paying interest
I
on.
understand that, but they're not, to force these people to pay off. Made money on that.
Yeah.
Okay, lots of money on that protection strip. And I just don't think that's right. The city put the adjacent landowner in a position that was.
Somewhat of a discussion like this before with the previous property owner that we that
fair market is though.
So vague.
Yeah.
So we tried to base it on an index of some sort that ties it to an inflation rate or what have you.
Dana, we're okay with, and Travis, we're
We just
okay with
want-
deleting the interest rate and doing that market value, whatever that 100 and whatever.
Well,
the
I
price of the
I think
road.
there should
We're
be a
okay for
cap.
Not to compound interest. Like if you want to strike
Some
that,
sort. I don't know what, but
Interest in general?
just delete interest in general. We're okay with that. We understand that the cost of like road and concrete and everything goes up. I mean, it goes up $20 January 1. This last year,
yeah.
it went up double. Like honestly, you just never know. But we're okay with
We
getting
just
paid
want,
back.
we just want to be fair.
Well, yeah, and that's what I want to do is make sure
I
that the
understand what
city
you're saying, that you
doesn't
don't want another
put-
100,000 in interest to be.
Yeah,
to
doesn't put the
later, but-
adjacent property owner, whoever it is, it probably won't be the
Well,
Tinases
and one
when
day,
it comes,
if
but
we ever
someday.
get past this and the PTSD goes away, I would love to be the developer that ties into that. We'll
So,
see how this all ends up.
But I mean, whatever's fair, I don't know, you decide,
well,
I think we've got
I
the
think,
cost analysis done and we can delete the interest. We're okay with that. If you guys feel better about that. And Dave's okay with that.
well,
but I don't
What-
know that that's completely fair either.
Well, because if
Oh,
you're paying
well, I,
interest on a loan and so I wonder if the heartburn is where that 10% is, maybe that is striking that final sentence in section A, reimbursement clause and, removing that kind of 10% ceiling, because that does give that expansion, and then instead focusing just on that market rate.
well, I'm trying to make it fair, because like I said, in the case that I'm talking about, not only did they capture enough money to pay for half the road, they probably paid for the entire road 3 times over in what they got because of interest. And I don't think that was fair. That was not fair to the adjacent property owner that,
It's just a skinny strip, and we feel like if somebody, the reason we want the protection strip, it was advised by our lender, he says, you gotta do that because you're
sure.
yeah,
putting
you've
in the
made,
cost of, and they get to.
Yeah, and I have no problem with them paying half the cost of the road and whatever, but that whatever's got to be reasonable. The whatever part has to be
Could we
reasonable.
say that they have to pay half the cost of the road at the time of
current market value.
current market value? Could we say that?
And that's kind of what that prior sentence is
I mean, so.
pushing for.
Minus the 10%.
Because if they build in 10 years, they need to pay half the cost of what that road would be. 'Cause
Would cost them.
you've already put that money in.
Yeah.
I
And
feel like that'd be fair.
so, I mean,
That would take into account
Inflation, right?
drawdowns and everything.
So,
See,
That's what that first sentence says.
and get rid of the 10%.
But instead of putting it in engineers' words or people that don't understand what's going on, could we just say half, half
Well,
of?
who determines what the?
You-
cost of
you have to
construction
Well,
is?
make it
so
legal.
in 2030, as that, whatever that section of road, whatever the costs would be, that needs to be reimbursed back to the
I
towns.
understand Dana's just saying, hey, this needs to be not a big number.
It-
needs to be more.
Well, but we don't know.
That's what I'm
I
saying
would
We
too.
don't
keep
know
the
what that
paragraph
is.
the same and take the recommendation of Amy and Dana, and strike the 10%. Because then it
Well, then there
addresses
is
the
no
market.
ceiling.
Then there is no ceiling?
Yeah, inflation goes to 15%, and then it's,
Well, then that's the risk that you take. Either you take the 10
Well-
now, or you take what the inflation could be.
While
Would
I,
that number be that 10%? I mean, is there a way to put a number to that?
There really isn't. I guess the main thing is just kind of giving it a ceiling so that it doesn't get exorbitant, kind of to the mayor's point, but
Right.
then also, so it's kind of trying to strike this delicate balance of, okay, we're looking at these average rates, there has to be a negotiated amount, and it can't be beyond this point.
What's the Deer Crest one, how many percent was there? I mean, I felt like 10 was
I don't think it addressed it.
I think that was the problem with the Deer Crest.
It was
There was no
vague.
set amount. It was whatever the developer.
I do
Yeah.
see value in the ceiling if,
10%.
10% per year is,
That's very
and
steep.
maybe that's,
Pretty-
maybe that's
yeah.
what
Yeah, that's
needs
pretty
to be-
steep
Maybe
compared to
not-
what
maybe
what
get
the
rid of the
rate you're
language
getting
of
money at
per
right
year.
now. That's very
they
steep.
got per annum.
Maybe
Same thing.
removing the compounded annually.
Yes.
I mean, maybe that's what,
If you're not specific, you should be specific because it will end up
right, and
a
that's,
situation that we've.
and
had
that's what we're intending to do with this, and maybe we're being overly specific because that's exactly the conversation
off
Dana and I had on this specific section is let's get really detailed, even to the point of our ordinance doesn't address it, but what does fair market, fair rate mean so that we can have a nexus to tie it to.
Can we put,
How about
Dollar
we
amount?
do, plus so
interest
out
rather
of-
than compound? You just don't
Like I
pay
said,
into,
I
you won't pay
It's
interest
a
on interest.
cumulative, it's
Yes.
cumulative, but it's
But you're
not
not paying
compound.
interest on interest.
We're fine with that.
So if we take out the compounded annually, would that suffice? I feel like this is addressing what you're asking it to address.
Well, we take out compounded annually and put in
And
probably,
I've talked to Tina, so they're never going to sell, so this probably will never.
But-
You never know.
Well, never say never.
What the mayor's saying though is not 10%, but whatever annually.
yeah,
Simple.
and it will be cumulative, but not compound.
That's fine.
Yes, Mayor. So let me kind of put this in my perspective. They're loaning money to develop this property, right? And they're going to pay it off. They're probably getting money at, I don't know what right now, maybe 5% or less. I'm sure.
A little more actually.
Is it for development loan? And you'll be paying that over a period of time. We don't know how long that is. Maybe the loan's only going to be for a few years and it's a couple of years and you're done with it, right? Depending on what you sell and the price of the value of the property. So, I mean, I think I do think there ought to be a limit with the simple interest, but they're gonna continue to pay on that loan over a period of time. We don't know what that is though. So I like the simple interest part of it. I just want to make sure it's fair to them, but not overwhelming to, it shouldn't compound. Compound's going to go raise it up and theirs is going to reduce over years, right?
Yeah.
They're paying
That's
less
why-
interest
that's why
every
if it's
year
just
and compounding,
cumulative-
they're going to pay more every
So
year.
replace the word compounded with cumulative. Can we do that? Does that make sense?
I
Is
don't know what that,
logical?
I don't know what cumulative interest means.
Yeah.
Well, so
Or-
let's say this year it's 5%, okay?
Mhm.
So they're at 100%, but they're paying that down, right?
Yeah.
But there's X amount locked in, half the cost of the road. So let's say half the cost of the road's $100,000. I'm sure it's a lot more than that, but it's $100,000.
Okay.
First year it's 5%. The next year it's 5%. So now we're at a total of 10%. But so it'd be 10% of the $100,000. So they'd pay 110% if they did it in 2 years. They did the first year, it'd be 105,000. Whereas if it's compound,
You're
okay,
paying on each.
you're pay, yeah.
You're
You pay on
increasing each
interest on
year.
Yeah, you
interest.
pay 5% now on 105,000. The second year, now you're paying, yeah. So it's just simple interest instead of compound interest,
And so
but
a
cumulative.
cumulative total of 10%, you're saying, or I mean, because
Well,
this is 10%.
The market value,
when is there a max on that though?
Mm.
So,
10%
Wow.
Well,
plus
so
market
this
value.
is the proposed max. Obviously, we can modify that.
The
but-
proposed max is 10% per year.
Not to exceed 10% and whatever the market value it is at that time. Correct?
Right.
Okay.
I think as
No.
long as we're in,
I don't think we need to put, market value is gonna be way ambiguous.
yeah, no, just
I think that's the
Take
cost
the
of the
current-
road now, current cost of the
roll to
road,
the now plus simple interest.
simple interest, okay.
Well, and I do wonder, I mean, to simplify and kind of not to go full circle back, but maybe it is removal of that last sentence because again, that other, if you're looking at those two measures and they're, federally instituted measures, then it gives you an average for the time being. And then we're not, if inflation goes crazy, then you're protected or, I mean, it doesn't put a cap on it necessarily, but maybe it puts it more focused on that other. Because it's still requiring a negotiation between the property owner and future development, so it's
Yeah,
not.
but then that would be the maximum though, would be,
Mhm.
but I still think, it's only a problem if it's 10, 15 years down the road. If it's 2 or 3 years down the road, either method would work fine. I'm not anticipating that going anytime soon. Okay, so I'm thinking we're more like we had up in
Mhm.
Dare Crest,
Mhm.
10 or 15 years down the road. Who knows? I mean, I thought the same thing about the triangle piece and until Mrs. Olson
That
died.
didn't
So,
work out.
so yeah, you never know when Mrs. Tinas passes away what will happen. So, I get that, but she might live 10, 15 more years too. Hopefully she will. So
So what is your suggestion then?
mine is to just leave it here and it's instead of the compounded annually. So plus, I'd start at 10 plus 10% of the cost of improvements, and I would put, as set forth in the agreement.
Plus 10% of the cost of improvements land.
If it was 10% for 10 years, that's 100%. So they would pay for the entire cost of the road, not just their half in 10 years. If it got to that point, they'd be paying.
So the compounded annually is
Probably
where
more
the
than
heartburn
that.
is.
Because it's
26
compounded.
years, 10 years from now, it will be double the price. That's still.
It'll
gonna be
probably
hard.
be more like 7 or 8 years because it's compounded here.
So then just get rid of that part and then right there.
Sorry, but when we have people speak, if you can hop up to the mic. Sorry, Jill, yeah, always here. I forgot.
Well,
So would you just?
Let me squeak a word in.
go ahead.
Squeak away.
While I agree with everything that's been said, the developers rolling the dice. They're the ones putting the road in. They're the ones spending the money up front, and I also, if it were me putting the money up front to pay for the road, I would feel better if I was protected with some interest. I mean, it's gonna be like, the cost of that road is gonna double, right? They're the ones rolling the dice, and it bothers me to just say, no, you don't get any interest.
Oh, I'm not saying don't get any interest.
He's just
I'm just saying I
compounding.
don't think they should make money on the project at the cost of the people that are not putting in their property right now, which is what happened up the street. They made a lot of money, okay, on the project.
So,
They recovered their investment,
two
the full
cents
cost of the
that
road, and a lot of
is-
money.
yes, you shouldn't make money, but on the same hand, in this particular strip, being only 200 feet wide, we did have to pay for a full road, full curb to go all the way around. And yes, what they're saying is, we are paying interest on that, and we don't know X amount of years if we will ever get paid back, but in order to get the project through and whatnot, I mean, eventually, I would imagine Tinas's land will get developed. So you're saying we shouldn't make money, but on the other hand, I'm like, but we have X amount of who knows how long before we ever get paid back that half of the road or whatever, so.
And you'll be
I
paying
think
interest.
That's what I was trying to say.
Oh, yeah, I believe there should be interest.
That's the,
Yeah, I think,
possibly the problem.
I think it should be half the road plus some
Simple
interest.
interest, would you use that, in banking terms, you use the
Well,
word
simple.
simple versus compounded, so
But,
to say
but
simple.
simple interest, yeah, it needs,
You're
it's,
saying you don't want it to compound on the interest.
Yes,
and that's-
simple interest is,
I know, I think eliminating the second sentence,
Because it was, that was just a case.
so and at the word land. Is that what you're saying?
future development.
The sentence
improvements
starting in
and
no
land
case.
set forth in this
No
agreement
case.
plus 10% of the cost of the improvements.
Oh, but then that gets rid of the 10%.
Yes.
Okay.
Because the
Because
prior
then-
sentence has the current interest rate averages, and so that's
Yes.
what it'd be based off of, and it does not say compounded there. So you're still capturing some interest based on the current
Capturing
rates.
interest.
Mm-hmm,
So and at the word development, future development.
mm-hmm.
Then basically, if it happens in 2031, we will easily be able to go back and say, federal rate was 2030, 2029 was this, and then we do that tabulation. And it doesn't compound, it just goes. It's just not compounded.
100 to be 100 and 110.
I think it needs to say that, I think it needs to explicitly say not compounded though. Sorry,
No, and I
somebody's
think,
gonna misinterpret it and say,
Yeah.
oh,
Well,
that's.
it's also, that is also a basis for it. It is a negotiation between.
And we found is moot, okay? It's, there's no basis for negotiation. If you want to develop your land, you're gonna pay us this exorbitant amount that we've come up with. That was the extent of the negotiation. What kind of negotiation is that?
Right.
And that's the problem. That's the problem I'm having is we held that person hostage and they had to pay an exorbitant amount of money because somebody signed our name to it. And they weren't even part of the agreement at the time. They come in after to negotiate. And there was no negotiation. They paid top dollar.
so I do have maybe a recommended change based on that. So this is in again, paragraph A, reimbursement. But I'm just going to read it and then add it where it would be. Developer agrees that reimbursement shall be in accordance with city code, generally consisting of the cost of improvements in land as shown in Exhibit B, together with a fair rate of interest as defined by the Federal Open Market Committee and/or Internal Revenue Service. Current interest rate averages, comma, not compounded interest, comma, that shall be negotiated. And so to specify specifically that that is not compounded, and that shall be negotiated between the developer and the adjacent property owners at the time of future development. So then it adds that clarification possibly you're looking for, I don't know.
Well, Mayor, can I
Yeah.
make a comment?
Go ahead, Steve.
So, I mean, it goes back to, they definitely need the interest, they definitely need all that stuff, but it has to be, so if it's in 10 years, whatever the cost of the road is, it can't be more than that in 10 years. And so I don't know how you figure that out, and that's what we need to figure out here. But if it costs $100,000 and all of a sudden this bill is $375,000, but the road only costs $200,000
The whole road.
for the road,
Which is exactly what happened up here.
and I don't know how we're ever going to get to that number, because who knows what that number is going to be.
Well,
But it can't be,
It's immaterial because the road is put in at X amount of dollars.
right,
And then deeded over to the city and we maintain it all and everything from that point
Right.
forward.
but they get
So
paid
their
back
investment
that.
is locked in it. Dollars and somebody needs to pay them $100,000 plus some interest. That's what we want to get to.
Yeah, I know,
is
but
what
I-
that plus interest
I
is.
think,
Well, I think if it's gone off that federal tax, whatever, you're never going to get to 375 if your cost was 200,000 because you're not 50%.
Well, what about 20 years from now or 30 years from now? You know,
You've got
it
that
keeps on
tax
going.
in there, and then you've also.
I think Amy's language addresses what you're
think so.
saying,
That's
Steve.
why I heard language average, right? So it's
Yes.
average. There's no way to
So,
put a specific number together because.
You
like
don't
you're
know what
saying,
it's
you don't
gonna be
know.
valued then, and I think Amy's suggestion really addresses what we're all hoping.
we'll all be long dead before it ever happens, so who cares? Your kids will be,
Well, it's very possible it could happen within 5 years. You know, you
Yeah,
don't
we
know,
just-
but
We
the way
understand.
property's going now.
We don't want the city to be in a pickle like they were with the Deer Creek, and we're fine. We just want to be fair. So whatever verbiage or whatever you can write there that you feel is fair and you're being fair with us, we're fine with that.
I like Amy's suggestion.
I just want to say, I'll go on record saying this. I said we would never do another protection strip. Okay, that's how bad I hate this. That's how bad I think somebody got screwed over up there, is that the city would never enter into another one of these. Why? Because that was not fair. That was so unfair. And so if we're gonna do it, we gotta do it right.
Yes, that's what
Can I go on record and say that this is on record? We will always be fair, and we would
Oh,
be fair in this.
there's-
We will
there's-
be fair
there's
when
no,
it comes
there's
to
no
that.
question of that.
We
but
will
it-
not be trying to stick it.
But you
And
have to have stuff written, because what,
Right, no,
stuff gets, we've had that problem on many issues where
Yeah.
you think, yeah, we'll be fair, but then someone ends up getting
And
their feelings hurt or
To-
something.
to
And
and-
the more
to
specific
speak
you are,
to
the better
the
it is.
reason protective strips exist is to make it fair for the developer.
Yes, because you spent all this
Fronting
money
all
up
that
front
cost,
and
so to
improve their
say that you
property.
would get rid of
Well,
protection strips is very unfair.
my point was, when I said it, is we'll let them enter into a development agreement that says that the adjacent property owner will pay for half the cost of what the road was to put in, period. And, you know, with no,
We've been told by lender and attorney and title company, you make sure you have a protection strip agreement in. And then we looked up that Pleasant View does have that in their bylaws, because we knew, we've been told by at least 5 or 6 people, almost laughing in our faces, this is the most horrible piece of ground because it's so skinny and wide, you'll lose money on this, you'll never, you know, it isn't, we didn't do this to make money. This is
Right.
our dream of living in Pleasant View. We're not trying to, the way we cut it up was for our friends and neighbors on our street we've lived on. 75% of it is them going there. We are not a developer trying to make a ton of money. This is just the piece of ground we have, and yes, it warrants a protection strip because
You
of.
absolutely
You're
have the
right, it
right to
does.
do that
Right.
because you're improving the property for the people when they wanted to develop it, and you should be compensated for your,
yeah, it's just
Your
trying to figure out what
upfront cost.
fair and
And just a quick,
that, because the agreement is
Yeah.
between them and us.
Yeah,
In reality, the agreement is between them and us. It's not between them and the Tinuses,
no,
which is where it really should be. We should say, you could come in here with, in reality, we should say, yeah,
If
you
they
can
don't
do a
want it in
protection
their
strip, go in there.
agreement.
You're
and
the
go on
one
with the
that whoever
Tinuses.
buys the Tinus's property, you're the one that has to say,
Right.
we have this agreement when you approve that subdivision to make it fair for the road. So yeah, that's where you're the middleman.
one good clarification that Dana brought up, and this is down in section 3 of the proposed agreement, but just that there is a 20-year limit to this
oh,
existing agreement. So that doesn't mean that there couldn't be an extension applied for after, but it would have to take another action. Oh, it is? Oh, not to exceed 20 years. No,
It will
you're
be.
right.
They
Yeah.
won't care in 20 years. It should be developed well before 20 years, I'm sure, so. Okay,
Hopefully, if I need that money
Any
in
other-
20 years, I'm not
So
doing it right.
there's
okay, we beat that one to
letter
death.
D, final approval.
What else? Dana, do you have other?
There's letter D.
So glad you brought that up. That, which is just final plat approval.
Okay, so are we all good with the development agreement, the
As
protection strip agreement, and the
changed.
escrow
Are we taking
Yes.
Amy's recommendations? Is that right?
with her red
Well, we'll
lines?
see who puts the motion out.
And so just the one last thing I had on the final plat approval. So in the code, always fun to find these little nuances. it says that the approval authority, which is you, may also require a fence of the, may require, let me specify that, a fence of the type to be determined. Basically, when you have a subdivision up against ag property.
I'd say no, that the fence is good enough that's there.
Most,
And
most
it's not a
likely the
requirement,
homes will
it's
put
an
up their own
option.
fences too.
And so
Then you end up with double fences.
1,900
and
feet
all
of
that
fencing.
nonsense.
Yeah.
$22,000 I priced it. It's a lot.
Gal.
So let's make it a rock wall.
All right. Is that it?
It needs to be 8 feet.
That is it.
Any other questions? If not, we can put a
So
motion
just a
together.
quick clarification for the motions, not to even throw a bigger wrench into this. And sorry, Debbie and I did our very best with the agenda, but yeah. So there's 4 different actions before you for this item, and Dana kind of broke those out a little bit, but you'll need to have 4 different votes on the different actions. So it's not one swoop. That the code is, because it's,
They're
yeah,
all separate agreements.
yeah. To
Start
throw
with
a wrench
I.
into
Mayor,
everything.
I'll make a motion that we
Development
approve the
agreement.
development agreement.
Right. Any further discussion?
With,
Oh, sorry. Motion by Gibson, second by
That means-
Bailey.
That's not it.
Oh.
That's not it.
Or just the development agreement. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's.
This is item C is the big deal.
Yeah. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any
Mayor,
opposed?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the ESCO agreement in item number 1.
Please to approve the escrow agreement. Any further discussion?
We approve the final plat approval, item number D.
You gonna skip
Skip.
C?
I'm gonna skip C because I'm not gonna make that motion.
Do you want me to make it? I'll make it.
So quick
Got a motion on
clarification,
the floor.
do we need to have them in that order?
If they don't approve the protection strip.
Draw my motion.
Sorry,
That's fine.
It's shown.
I'll give it a shot.
based on the studies
Go,
I've
Kevin,
reviewed.
go.
That's fine. I was trying to do things what I wanted to do.
By Gibson on that one. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve item number D with the aforementioned milers to be brought in and signed.
Offer and extend a huge thanks, well, first of all, for the developer, but also our staff. I know they kind of been over backwards to help get us here, and really, really appreciate Dana, Jill, Debbie, stepping up to the plate, and Yvonne was here right before Thanksgiving. We all, Thanksgiving miracle.
I appreciate the help
I don't-
and the expertise of your staff.
I don't think the TAM should be able to have such a large piece of
Congratulations, you
property there. I
guys.
think that's kinda
Seriously, they're our dream, we will do nothing but be good.
kinda
Rest is
selfish.
fun.
Have you sold all your lots already?
We have.
Good for you.
I wish not, because we could have got more money. We
Oh.
got to sell it.
Oh.
But we'll get out of your hair, thank you.
All right, thanks. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, Jill would be so happy, she's gotta be the.
Jill,
He has a smile.
She's sick.
She's smiling.
let's see.
We've missed Jill so much. Ooh.
I'll be back tomorrow for a day.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
They're saying thank you repeatedly. They're not on mic, but they're saying thank you repeatedly to you. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a good night.
Have a
You're
good
not
night.
hanging out for the rest of the meeting? You're our public.
No, I love storm drains, but I'm not.
Okay, item 2, it's public hearing for discussion of possible action to consider vacating an easement located within the heart of Pole Patch Subdivision 2 between lots 9 and 10. Entertain a motion to go to public hearing.
Second.
Motion by what?
Number 2. I think I messed up the agenda to make it confusing. Annual storm drain. Stormwater training.
What?
New
public
agenda,
hearing
you've
for-
added 3
Oh,
public
great.
hearings.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't think, I was like, I didn't see that on the agenda, so.
Sorry. Oh,
That-
that didn't
Yeah.
change for that
You
one.
guys not get the new agenda?
I have it here,
it's
but
I
in
made
your
copies for
slot.
everybody.
No,
I'm
you got it.
I
sorry.
had the old one in my mind.
I should have
don't
been
know why I
using
was-
the new one.
Okay,
Yeah, Pole
anyway,
Patch,
so I'd
that's
go
what we
into
have for-
a motion to
Chamber thing.
go into a public hearing.
He made it, and I seconded it.
Okay, motion by Bailey, second by Yuri. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're in a public hearing. Amy?
And actually, we are very blessed to have Jill with us. I didn't know she'd be here, so she will be presenting, not me.
All right, I'm pulling it up. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay, so here's the location. It is in the heart of Pole Patch Phase 2. It's these 2 lots. It's lot 9 and 10. The reason why they want to vacate it is because the owner wants to combine the lots, which they've already gone through planning commission and remove the lot line, so it's coming to you to vacate the easement. This is kind of the design. It'll be one huge lot. They did get the letters from all
Jill,
the,
I think we're getting some feedback or echo in from your,
hold on. Let me try something really quick.
thank you.
What is the easement, Amy? What easement goes through? Is it a utility easement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
PUE, right?
Just a
Okay.
standard-
How's that? Can you hear? Is it better?
Had to get letters from Rocky Mountain and
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you now better. Sorry.
all those.
Okay, so they've got the letter from Tyson. He provided a letter, Rocky Mountain Power, CenturyLink, Comcast, and Pineview. They're going to be moving the easement if you are able to if you will vacate it down to the south portion of that lot. And they will be putting in a line for Pineview. And that's what I have for the vacating of the easement. They've met all the requirements that we require on our ordinances.
It's a pretty easy one. Any members of the public wish to speak to this? If not, I'd entertain a motion to close the
Mayor, I'll
public
make a
hearing.
motion that we go out of a public hearing.
I'll second the motion.
Motion by Gibson, second by Marriott to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
I
Any opposed? Okay, we're back in our regular meeting.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve this dissolution of the easement as stated in item number.
Haley, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I guess it don't matter which way we do these. If we want to do the public hearings, so it's
Great.
annual stormwater training, item 3. Dana.
On the agendas.
I'm sorry for this training.
You're welcome for this.
Oh,
Well,
I fell asleep 4 times just reading it. Okay,
Oh, reading the plan?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and that is the uber condensed version.
yeah.
Yeah.
You want to come sit right here? just pull up a seat, Dana. You don't have to stand up there to.
Whoa, you're already losing your audience.
Plan. So this is what you have received in your packet. This is what you're going to hopefully be adopting in the next item. So the program plan is, I'm not going to go and read all this text, but I'm going to hit on some of the highlights, which I have. But why is it needed is because this is a discharge permit that's issued by the state, which they get permission from the EPA to issue this. So this is something that you have to do if you want to be in compliance with state and federal regulations. And then this plan that we put together provides guidance and goals and measurables and deliverables to meet the permit requirements, which are many. And this is your annual training that is required by all who deal with stormwater issues. And you deal with it because you are the budgeting peoples. This is just kind of a cute graphic, but it's a little scary too, because it shows what all can go into your storm drain, and that ends up in your streams and lakes and reservoirs. And if you think of like other municipalities upstream of, say, I don't know, Pineview, then if they're discharging this into the reservoir, Ogden gets their drinking water out of that. So just things to consider. It is filtered. It is filtered. It is treated, but this just makes it more difficult. Okay, so just some of the definitions or acronyms that are used in this presentation. MCM is a minimum control measure, and those are just items that are used to reduce or prevent or reduce the discharge of pollutants. And then BMPs, best management practices. It's a pretty universal term, but for stormwater, these are going to be actions or items that prevent or reduce stormwater pollution. So basically you use BMPs to meet your MCMs. BMPs are not just like structural, like silt fencing. That's the first thing people think of. Oh, BMP will just put silt fencing. But that can be ordinances, it can be design standards, it can be standard operating procedures, just all kinds of things. So it's listed in, so just to backtrack one step, this is the actual permit. And there are 20 pages in here. There are nothing but permittee shall, permittee shall, permittee shall. 20 pages of that. You are the permittee, so Pleasant View City shall do all those things. Division of Water Rights, they sometimes claim snowpack and sometimes don't. So the snowpack reservoirs. That's right.
But we're in a drought, it's mine.
That's right, yes. So I mean, everywhere from the top of the snowpack to the Great Salt Lake and the groundwater underneath. It's basically 6 categories. And it's public education, public involvement, illicit discharge, construction, long-term stormwater management, and pollution prevention. That's the short version of those items. And we're gonna get into details on those shortly. Each of those sections, which I was saying, the 20 pages of thou shall do this, contains tasks, goals, and deadlines. in stormwater education and outreach programs, to build public awareness, to reduce bad behaviors, and encourage the public to participate in stewardship.
I'm going to ask you a hard question on that. What have we done in the past to ensure that we've met this, or is this a new standard?
So, there hasn't been a whole lot of
Our newsletter that goes out every month very often has something to do with stormwater.
Oh, very good.
CM number
Mostly during
2.
the spring.
Oh,
Mostly
sorry.
during the spring,
Yeah.
and summer. Yeah, I'm like, oh, I just saw that.
Yes. So this is, yeah, public education and outreach. So, yes. Yep. Many people just find an empty storm drain and dump their oil into it. Ask Tyson how much fun that is to track down with the health department and the state and cleanup measures, and you get the bill. So, but one thing that does help is that Pleasant View City is part of the Golden Spike Stormwater Coalition, and the coalition has a management firm that helps with these public education and outreach programs. So some of the commercials you see on TV, like We All Live Downstream, that's a coalition sponsored commercial, and that counts for you as well. So when, yes, so you get credit for anything that the Golden Spike Stormwater Coalition is doing by way of being a member and paying your dues. It does not eliminate everything that you're supposed to be doing, but it does provide some of the items. Public outreach are just like curb installation. You see these around. And then you can do those as like a little scout project. You can do it as just a community service project, Earth Day activity, or just a school or club project. But the outreach is, you have to let people know that this is an available program. And actually Tyson was even talking about maybe doing a stencil instead of those glue-ons, because they don't last very long sometimes if they're not installed correctly, and having kids put them on doesn't work. But a stencil sometimes would be better. So what Debbie was saying, we do add snippets to the newsletter, and that counts. And then also one of the other tasks in the permit says that you have to place stormwater information on your website. That includes your stormwater management plan, a hotline for questions, and then a link to your ordinance. Right now, you do have a link to the stormwater management plan, the current one, not this one yet, and the hotline, but no link to the ordinance yet. But that's an easy fix. And then we can check that off. Staff, and that would be someone in public works, or even code enforcement. We have to document all of our outreach materials and efforts. So. SI. Office, he's doing a lot of the, I believe that we're doing a lot of the inspections right now. And I think that meets your requirements. But you really should have an RSI on staff, especially for enforcement.
It's a good thing for us clarify, and I should have excused Tyson as well. His son is getting some scouting awards this evening, so he apologized and was willing to come, and I said, no.
He just didn't want to go through the training.
No one did.
Okay, so MCM number 2. Hey, look, we're already on number 2. Public involvement. So this is different than public education. This is implement a program which complies with state and local public notice requirements. So to take comments on your stormwater plan. So we can check off one of 2 annual public hearings. Other items we can do are committees, programs, volunteer opportunities, but we do have to have 2 opportunities to involve the public in our plans and such. The industries, those are some of your biggest problems, that's where your problems occur, but also your local landscapers. Those are probably the worst offenders of your stormwater plan. The public involvement is similar to public education, but it's more aimed at process, so hence like public hearings and such. So one of the requirements is to post the SWIMP on SWIMP, that's our name for that, on the website and at City Hall. Keep all of our documentation. Number 3. I'm trying to go fast. Illicit discharge, and so this is the bad stuff, right? So what we need to do, and mind you, this is not everything, these are not all of the tasks that are in the permit. These are just some of them. So we need to revise, implement, and enforce an illicit discharge program to find and eliminate sources that are non-stormwater. You do have a good ordinance already, so that's fantastic, but we don't have any sort of plan.
Dana, who monitors that? I mean, we have so many different discharge areas, and we discharge into the canal, we discharge into
Yes.
into all these different detention bases.
Yes.
Who monitors where? I mean, because there's not one place that really. I mean, we go a lot into 2700.
Correct. Yeah.
But also North Ogden.
Yes.
That big pipe is a collector for several cities.
Yes.
So, is there any place where we're monitoring what comes out of our city?
Supposed to be, yes. You're supposed to be.
Our guys do that?
Well,
So-
you can't really. I just don't see.
So yeah, no. To address that, you're right. You have a lot of discharge points, and you're supposed
how far west
to.
would catch something. All of a sudden there's a big oil slick that comes into the far west. Oh my gosh! And we could maybe backtrack it
Yes.
for the worst case scenario.
Hmm.
How in the world do you ever soap from a car wash or something? I wash my car. I don't know. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, I don't know how you ever monitor that other than.
So what we're supposed to be doing, and without the staff to actually do these, we're falling short, to just be blunt. You're supposed to be inspecting during the dry season 20% of all of your outfall locations. And that is just a visual, looking at it. You can stick your head, you can pull the grate, look at where your pipe is coming into a 2700 storm drain.
If we have 3-eyed fish in the Barker Pond, then we know we have a problem.
Yes, if you have an oil sheen on Barker Pond, but it could be soups are a problem. So those are all, but we're supposed to be doing dry weather screening to see if there's anything that's standing out. If there's an issue during dry weather, it's going to be obviously an issue during wet weather too. But it's a problem right then, and it's something that's occurring that's not coming off the road.
So we're not doing that right now. generally, or we are?
I doubt you've done dry weather screenings
Okay,
in the
go
past
ahead.
several
Sorry,
years.
sorry. I'm sorry.
But that's kind of one of the purposes of this presentation, is to demonstrate how much you're supposed to be doing, and it's not
I mean,
fun.
is there a place in our city that we could have, 4 major end pipes or something? Barker Pond's a big outlay of our thing.
Mhm.
Over the detention basin is a big.
Measure, and when you say measure, we're not looking at, amount of water,
Yeah,
we're looking at the
but-
quality.
But if you look
Right.
at a call, but if you did
Yes.
a dip or something,
Yep.
I just had something there
Yep.
where I don't know, I mean, you could.
No, and you're right on target, because just talking with Tyson about this, he's like, you can buy pretty cheap now a portable water quality device that you can take a sample out of your storm drain, put it in this, and it'll analyze it for heavy metals or oils or VOCs or whatever, and tell you it's good or bad. And you can do, I mean.
Because I have no idea Parkland. I really don't know how the plumbing works in Parkland. Does that all go into that horseshoe canal or horseshoe?
Yes, the
Everything in
horseshoe
Parkland
pond.
goes into the horseshoe pond.
Yes,
But
yep,
again, that's everybody's.
Yep.
Goes into the horseshoe pond.
yes.
2,700. Everything goes in and goes into that. So how would we claim Pleasant View's share of
Well,
some?
so you have storm drains before it discharges into the pond. So you just go to your first storm drain, your catch basin upstream of it, and take a sample from there or look at it there.
All right, go ahead.
So.
Sorry.
but
That's 2 minutes. That's 2 minutes. You'll never get back.
As you can see how it's a big issue, and there's a lot to do, and there's a lot to look at, and issues. Implement procedures to prevent illicit connections and discharges.
Where's my picture?
Looks like, purple. That's a problem, probably. So that's the official definition of an illicit discharge. It's basically anything that's not stormwater, pure stormwater, except the permit. There's a lot of them. I'm not going to read them, but these are things you don't have to worry about. These are, foundation drains, irrigation water, springs that are running off, fire hydrant flushing, I believe, is in there. This version, this permit cycle, they added the word emergency to firefighting. And then they're just letting it run down. And they use some pretty nasty chemicals in firefighting. So they said it's an emergency firefighting activity. If there's a house, if there's something on fire, then it's not an illicit discharge. But if they're just using it for training, it's an illicit discharge, and they need to control it. So here's some of the tasks. These are the big tasks. We basically want to avoid illicit discharges, locate any problem areas, so mainly industrial areas or possibly even residential areas, like I was saying about landscapers. Find or remove illicit connections, and document your actions taken. Inspect all your outfalls, which is what Steve was getting at. That's actually a requirement. Promote the collection of household wastes. So maybe have like a spring cleanup and have a hazardous waste collection here, at City Hall, or advertise where to take it. That's something we can put in the newsletter. Publicize a hotline for reporting illicit discharges. I won't get into my recent example of this that I had. This presentation, literally, I'm watching out my window at my house, and my neighbor's doing a new driveway, and I watch the concrete trucks pull up, and I'm like, oh, please don't wash that into the gutter. What am I gonna do? I stressed for like 2 hours over this. I gave myself a migraine. I had looked on the city's website. It took me forever to find a hotline in case they were gonna luckily they didn't. They actually, because their plant's just up the road. But finding that hotline, if someone's doing an illicit discharge, you need to be able to find it quick. So put it on the front of your website.
That's concrete. Gutter's made of concrete.
The next one, developing standard operating procedures for avoiding or tracking, cleaning up illicit discharges, and then conducting annual training. Here we are. And just document everything. This is what you think of when you think of an illicit discharge, right? Some guys pouring oil down the storm drain, which happened here somewhat recently, just off of, I think they tracked it back to a business just off of 89, and it ended up over in the Horseshoe Pond, I think. Yeah, so
Don't they get heavily fined for that?
apparently it was done in the middle of the night. And
Nobody can prove who did it.
were you part of that, Chief? Okay, so they bring in, like Tyson brings in the health department, and they help clean it up and help document it all and notify the state and what have you. So, but that's what happens. I mean, people go and find a place. But here are some maybe not so obvious things. Leaking dumpsters. Just grass clippings. That's just organic.
I know a place you might want to look. It's off of 375.
Illegally discharging contaminated water, just, pushing your grass clippings into the gutter. All this ends up in your storm drain, in the stream, and, in the lake or the reservoir.
Grass is nitrogen.
We have a huge nitrogen problem.
GSL sucks it out and sells it again.
Global warming.
I stopped at a convenience store, maybe it was probably last year, and someone was actually dumping their mop bucket into the storm drain. And I just, by the time I can't say anything, I happen to know where that storm drain went, and it goes nowhere. So, but I've seen that one actually in progress. The cheapest stuff that the cheapest stuff is not going to be the good stuff, right? But just a couple of other, like leaking fuel tanks, swimming pool water.
At a car wash, don't they have to have
They
special drains and stuff where their water goes?
dechlorinated.
Where does it go?
Car wash goes, they recycle it, and then it gets discharged into the sanitary sewer.
Into the sewer?
Sanitary, yes. You just throw some soda ash in there. Just to get your chlorine down. So, and then I found this is an illicit connection. People see a storm drain on their property and they're just gonna, hey, I'll connect into it, with my septic.
I actually know some people who've done that.
Yeah, so this is the kind of the landscaping I was talking about, when you're building fences, sidewalks, new driveways. I see this a ton. Before I was aware of this permit, my fence guy actually did this. And because there's still grit in the curb gutter, in the gutter, so.
What about a sump pump? Can people put sump pumps into storm drains?
Yes,
They can?
that's a
sump pumps?
foundation drain, yes, that's considered a foundation drain.
We have developers.
Our public education, and we should be. Yes. Yes.
You
So,
take it- you have to go to the transfer station. or somewhere else.
Yes, but if they're just doing,
No.
if they're just doing like a curb cut,
I know that's what
you know,
they'll
if they're coming
say,
in for a
but-
curb cut permit because they're doing a new driveway, you know, maybe we give them a pamphlet that says you need to make sure that your guy's not doing this. So that's part of the education.
Who finds them if they violate it and you can prove it?
You do,
The city does?
yes.
Do we have any sort of fine that, I don't
Yeah,
think we
you
do.
have a, yeah, you
Huh?
have a,
It was off.
I don't know if there's actually a fee schedule, but there is a
Well, I don't even think that's on the fee
enforcement
schedule at all,
provision
is
in your
there?
code.
For like
Yes,
storm drain violations, I don't think we even have anything.
so, fun stuff.
Don't even think about it.
So if you see something, say something. The police force is actually a very excellent tool or resource. If you got, you know, your guys driving around, if they see something that looks kind of fishy, you know, check it out, notify Public Works, something. Yeah, but they're a great resource because they're on the move a lot and you know, they're watching out for things and, yeah, it's just, anyway. So you are your city's eyes and ears. Okay, number 4, construction, yay. So some of the items on here, we're going to revise, implement, and enforce a program to reduce pollutants from construction sites. And there are 2 types of construction sites. One, actually technically 3, but construction sites greater than 1 acre, and then sites less than 1 acre that are part of a larger plan of development. It gets confusing on the permitting side, but just know that.
That's SWIP, right?
That's a SWIP.
That's run by the state, not the, right?
Yes.
Not
It's
the
a
city doesn't enforce that. Well, we. probably would
Yes, you
enforce
are
it.
the enforcement, actually. They have to get a state permit, but they also have to get a city permit. It's called a Stormwater Construction Activity Permit. And that's how we make sure that they have a SWIP. A fee should reimburse the city for those inspections. Associated with the stormwater construction activity permit, I don't believe.
I don't know if you could hear me. I believe there is a line item on a building permit for the stormwater activity.
Are you needing an answer from me? Sorry, every other word is gone.
I'm just asking you I believe that is a line item on a building permit currently, that there's a stormwater activity permit.
Yes, we
line.
charge $50 and we do that for any new construction.
Thank you.
You need to charge more. You have it, so kudos. So anyway, construction, it applies to public and private. Whenever we do construction projects that will disturb more than 1 acre, we get a SWIP. We make the contractor put together and submit a SWIP and follow it. So it's not just private. For the construction permit, we need to revise and enforce your ordinances to make sure they meet the current permit standards, require SWIPs. Area, just FYI. And then they're also responsible for enforcing the ordinances and violations and, you know, enforcement actions on the contractors. Tasks that are in this section. I just thought I'd let you know of all the things
And all
that.
of these are required due to federal law.
Yes, no, yeah, these are required. Permittee shall develop SOPs. Permittee shall, that's how it's written.
So there's not an option to not do it, you have to do it.
No,
Is this state law or federal law?
this is state law because you're getting, the EPA has what is the word?
Designated?
Basically, the state has given the state authority, I can't remember, delegated authority to Utah to develop their own permit. There are actually, I think Wyoming maybe is the only state that doesn't have their own.
Here, but coordinating efforts with, you know, like that conglomerate where they do those ads and that, is that something, because we are a smaller city, that we could partner with North Ogden or other areas to kind of make sure to check all these boxes? No.
No, because you are the permittee, you are Pleasant View City, it is your storm drain system. Public education outreach you can do because it's reaching a broader audience, but all these other items are specific to your system. I mean, I guess you could hire North Ogden to come do your inspections, but just FYI, they're going to do theirs first.
Right.
So, but a lot of these are developing city-specific operating procedures or maps or forms or things like that, ordinances, so. Construction and building permits. So as long as Jill's not asleep and I'm not looking if you are, then this counts.
Sorry, I didn't hear anything you said. Every other sentence is white noise.
You're fine. Don't worry about it. So this is just an example of one of the forms that we use. Okay, MCM number 5. We're on the home stretch. This is the long-term stormwater management. This is our fun, retention, and low-impact development. So we need to revise and enforce a program to address post-construction stormwater runoff from public and private new development and redevelopment sites. This is detention ponds, bioswales, things that are permanent that will be there after all the construction is done. So we have the construction side of things, and then we have post-construction, or what I don't like to use post-construction, I use long-term, because these are things that are going to be there long-term.
Real quick, what's a bioswale?
Bioswale, I have a picture of it, easier to describe. I'll get to that. And this does not substitute for quantity like detention, other than our wonderful legislator passed a law that said that whatever they're retaining, you must subtract from the detention. Agreed with, but you know, who are we? And then stormwater controls incorporate into the design of structures, and this is like site design. Incorporate some of these things to minimize your runoff, and we'll get into a little more details. And it applies to both public and private. As a city, you're supposed to be implementing low impact development. This is the official definition of low impact development, but the easy definition is just structural and non-structural ways to minimize, slow, and or clean stormwater flows. So before that land was houses and before it was an alfalfa field, when the native vegetation was there, that's what we're trying to mimic. And by keeping that stormwater on site, we're replenishing our aquifers. And Mayor, tomorrow I will have a memo for you on what you asked for about this, actually.
That
It's
helps
finally
our
done.
water situation up in the hill.
Is mimic development. So, and we can do everything from, oh,
So, but they allow all the water from French drains and around the houses, all the storm water off of a house can go into a storm drain. Seems counterintuitive to me that they would do that, so.
I use the same word. Give me like one more slide. Or actually, no,
The
that's in
mayor
my
just brought
memo.
up
I
a-
take that back. That is actually in my memo I wrote to you guys that I'm going to give to the mayor tomorrow that basically says land drains are counterintuitive to low impact development.
Yeah.
Exactly what I use.
So he
Yes.
brought up a good point. It's, what about the Great Salt Lake where the storm water needs to be going to help?
Quit irrigating your lawn and diverting so much water.
Come on, Sarah, quit doing that.
Yes, what was I thinking?
I know. We're trying to keep the natural water that's coming from the sky
True.
here. And if we can minimize people watering their lawns, you can keep water going down the streams like it used to.
We'll get rid of some of our lawn.
Water that's running off.
Hey,
Can we do a study to see if that's feasible?
I can do a study.
Oh, we got him on two
He
counts.
woke up at least.
He opened his eyes.
He had to roll both eyes on that one.
So low impact development, some examples are minimizing impervious areas, preserving natural features. Some of the structural features are, infiltration basins, rain barrels, permeable pavements, bioswales. So under this MCM, these are more tasks. Some of these things we've actually already, we have implemented. We do need to update our standards to fully implement them and kind of nail them down. But with each development that's coming in, we are requiring them to do LID, retention, and feasibility. As part of this permit, the city had to adopt at least 3 LID practices, and I'll get to that in just.
5.
Oh, sorry, it's 5. I'm getting tired.
Just testing to see if we were okay.
So some non-structural examples of low impact development are like cluster subdivisions, where you're minimizing the disturbed area, you're maintaining the natural features. You can use this on steep hillsides. You can use this, in floodplains. It's all around, in my opinion, a more responsible development. Maintain,
So
yes.
you have to have that dedicated open space then?
conservation easement.
Yes, it's typically considered.
Typically, but if
Yes.
you don't, then all you've done is.
Not sure, but that's something that, as part of this MCM, that we can look into modifying our ordinances to, further allow these or in specific areas or stuff like that. So I think technically you still do. It's just not super clear. Is minimizing like curb cuts at the streets, because people around here love like a 3-car garage and RV parking and a garage in the back. And and eventually you have 60% of your site is now impervious. That's a lot of concrete, that's a lot of runoff. And you have to remember that that is going into your stormwater or your storm drain system, and we're having to upsize pipes because of this. Because as the storms are coming, we have to be able to handle the water. So the more impervious surface you have on each lot, that's the more. It's an old graphic.
Do you have any green space left in your house?
I did. Yeah. So. Exactly. There you go. So.
We're up to 7?
So
Oh,
the state law said you had to select at least 5, but the city has selected 7 that they'd be willing to take on long-term, because these things get transferred over to the city to maintain in perpetuity. We do have different, I know you can't see this and I'm sorry, but residential public roads, that's the ones that we needed to select items for. But like in private roads, which so in like PRUDs or apartment complexes, more of these items are allowed. Can you hit the back button real quick? So there are certain ones like tree box filters, green roofs, pervious surfaces that the city was like, we don't want to deal with those, but we would be willing to allow private development to do them. And there are caveats with some of these, so, but just FYI. So these are some examples of the low impact development. This is, anyone know where this is? Well, I walked past this about 2 years ago. It was covered in snow. And after I walked past it, I turned around and I walked back. I was like, that's a rain garden. It's a rain garden. So it's just a depression, and they have some plantings in here, some drought tolerant plantings. But it just collects the water from the parking lot, and it just filters down into this rain garden or bioswale. They're very similar. The underneath is different, but
And it seems to be a cheaper way of dealing with.
yeah, this is just one way to deal with it, and you can push your snow into it, and it won't hurt it. So, so this is, like a bioswale. You have a vegetated strip of grass that's collecting some of those contaminated, or contaminants, and then it discharges into a
What about
bioswale.
mosquitoes, though? Can you have
These should drain within, I think it's 48 hours.
Mosquito life is longer.
So standards on how quickly it needs to infiltrate.
Yeah, so it doesn't
Yes.
cause other
Built
problems.
up when they get.
Yes. That's part of part of this. So this is one place that we're doing this. This is just on 1325 West, right? 89 is right here. The church is right there. This is Osage. You guys remember that, right?
That's John Hansen's.
Yes, John Hansen's. So we're doing 10-foot wide bioswales, or bioretention cells, excuse me. We have a neck down intersection, and we're doing those in there. And what we're doing is the water is going to come down the gutter, go into this curb cut, flow through the bioretention. Some of it's going to infiltrate, and then what doesn't infiltrate will come out this other curb cut. So in this, on this type of thing, this is supposed to be natural filtration. There's engineered soil that goes in the bottom of it. And by engineered, that's not like me engineered, that's soil engineering. So
Crushed rock.
they put in it, but it's to capture some of those contaminants and such. And then, I beg your pardon? Like super cool.
You know, and sewer treatment plants, they use like rock and things like that.
And to be drought tolerant. So these are, I don't know, this will be the first one in the city, that type. But we modeled this after Ogden, right behind the Ogden Temple along Grant Street. And they've actually extended this all the way down to 24th now, if you drive there. And it looks super good. So, and that's basically what we're doing at Osage. Infiltration basins, we have typically, when we do infiltration basins, we are doing the retention on the bottom and then having additional storage for detention on the top. So whatever amount that they can get to infiltrate will infiltrate, and the rest of it will be detained, just like a normal detention pond. So we're kind of getting a 2-for-1 deal on that. But we do want some pre-treatment ahead of that if we're going to be infiltrating that just directly into native ground. So you can see like there's trash and stuff in there. We don't want that sitting in our detention ponds. This is being done up in Harris Hills and Heart of Pole Patch. No, yeah. Heart of Pole Patch. These are dry wells. So what we're doing is we're taking water that's coming into the storm drain, and it's coming into the storm drain here, and the first outlet is going, the bottom outlet here. So the initial water is going to go into, it's actually the little treatment thing right here, but it'll go into this dry well and then get infiltrated into the ground. And then whatever can't be handled through that, or if this fills up during the storm, then we have a normal storm drain outlet out of that box. But we do have a snout to prevent any floatables from getting into the dry well. And then there's a sump as well to get all the sediment out. Have to go around us, but that's this is another way to do retention. You can also do detention underground. We actually have this up at Highland Meadows, Brent Bailey subdivision across from Deer Crest up at 4300. So instead of having it, they had limited amount of room work, and instead of having to do a retaining wall to have a detention pond, they went subterranean with it. And these are our tanks, and these are contact chambers, and there's different manufacturers, but they're really slick. And if we're doing these as retention and letting the water infiltrate, then we're doing a pre-treatment upstream with it. We have another one of these going in, proposed that we review. Yes. Residential subdivision, and then there's another one in the works right now too. So, so other tasks in the long-term stormwater management section is has to do with ordinances, documentation, standard operating procedures. That's a big item that we don't have much progress on. And then we have been requiring these long-term stormwater management agreements. You've seen those come across your desks a few times, mainly for like commercial sites.
Developers are still getting a hang of that. They get kind of frustrated, like, what is this? And
It's about 10 years new, but you know. But developers, it's new every time. Yes.
I've never seen this
Yeah.
before. This is not how we've always done it.
Yes. Yes.
Nobody
Yeah.
ever says that.
Pleasant View is the only city that requires this. But yeah, so yes. Yes, so those are just some of the major tasks. These are some of the other tasks. Plan reviews, we need to have a procedure for doing a plan review, which I don't have. Review the plans, which we are, creating an inventory of all of our long-term BMPs, which we kind of have, we're working on actually. We're doing those in GIS, keeping that up to date, and then doing training, and then keeping documentation. So much to do, right? Number 6. Don't you remember? You want me to go back to slide 2? No. This is number 6 and final. Yay! And actually, so this has to do with your owned facilities. This is things that you own and maintain, the city. And what we want to do is protect the stormwater runoff from these facilities. Public Works Yard, City Hall, the detention pond, all the detention ponds, your streets, everything is that you own and operate falls under this category. Inventory for all these, which we are working on. We need to develop a SWIP for each facility, perform weekly inspections, perform quarterly comprehensive inspections, and you can see all the others. SOPs, the develop and update SOPs is for this particular MCM is going to be a beast. Yes, and we have found examples, and so we had provided that in a previous, so one of our other clients just got audited from the state. Let me tell you, that was a lot of fun to sit through. But in their read 2 a day and redline them, cross it out. Never touched them. So when the audit came, they pulled up that stormwater management plan and they said, well, where's your SOP for this? And they handed them this template that had absolutely nothing to do with that particular city in the state, and they got written up. They have 52-page of violations. A lot changes from this permit. In 5 years, they're going to update it and they're going to tweak a couple of things. But all of these things are basically going to stay the same. they might change like quarterly to biannual or something like that. But some of these things are one and done and then just maintain. But it's just getting those initially done that has been hard. It's been really hard. And it's just a comprehensive plan from all those 6 items: public education, public involvement, and good housekeeping. I remembered all 6. And it requires everyone to be involved, from city council to the bottom rung of public works. Everyone is involved, even over to the police department. I could say yes, but no. And honestly, based on the audit that we just went through, the state doesn't care. You have a mechanism to, through your, fees and or taxes, to collect stormwater funds, and that's what they expect you to do in order to meet the permit requirements. I'm not joking when I tell you that. So.
What are the consequences for violation?
Extreme example that I know of, Salt Lake County was audited in like 2008 maybe, but they fell under an earlier permit, and they had like 15 or 20 years to do a lot of these things and get their program up and running and what have you. Then the state came in and audited them, and it was the state and the EPA. They ended up, their enforcement was that they had to pay a $270,000 fine, and they had to hire, I can't remember, I think it was like 7 full-time employees to implement.
The money.
To implement.
I guess raise your taxes and.
Yes, to
whatever
implement
else.
their program. I'm pretty sure it was like 7 full-time employees. That was their.
I'm feeling so trained now.
Mayor, can I ask just one question? Is there regulations to what it could be in the sewer water? I mean, I don't.
What's allowed to be. in
Yeah,
there?
what's allowed to be in there? Is there any restrictions on?
Yeah, there's not
sewer?
supposed to be stormwater in the sewer.
Well, that's all,
I mean, really?
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, no, I
yes.
understand that. I agree. I'm just wondering, because we don't want paint, we
Or
don't want
oil or
oil
anything
and all that
flammable,
stuff,
yeah,
but
none
is
of
the
that
sewer
stuff.
regulated that way somehow?
Yes, yes, the sewer is regulated very similarly.
That's easier to find if somebody's poured gasoline or thinner or something down the sewer, because the neighbor's house usually explodes, so.
Firefighter experience.
No, thank you.
It's true. Because most people's,
All your
unless you have a water softener, your floor drain in the basement's probably dry. So fumes will come up there and hit the water heater. If you have water softener, or that's putting
Running
water
water
down
down
there
that drain.
occasionally, yeah.
Yeah,
like-
thank you for
and-
that.
Yeah, thanks for all the hard work, Dana.
All right, item 4, public hearing, discussion and possible action to adopt the 2021 Stormwater Management Plan, Resolution 2021-L. Entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Yuri, second by Bailey. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, we're in a public hearing. Dana? We're trained on, right? It's in your packet. Hopefully y'all had.
So that packet, this is what I had given you 3 weeks ago now, I think. That's what we need you to adopt, saying that you're going to do everything that we just went over.
Mayor, seeing there's no public, I'll make a motion to go out of a public hearing.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion to close the public hearing. Motion by Gibson, second by Marriott. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, we're in the
Mayor, I'll
public
make a motion that we approve the stormwater management plan in resolution 2021-L.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion by Gibson, second by Yuri to approve resolution 2021-L. Roll call vote. Bailey,
Yes.
Yuri,
Yes.
Marriott,
Yes.
Gibson.
Yes, by adopting that, do we?
We gotta do something about
What
it
do we
now.
have to do? I mean, what,
Well, we already have one. This is the new plan. I mean,
so we've got,
So
I
we'll
mean,
have to
those
adjustments.
5 things that have been already adopted, are they?
Yeah, we'll have to make some recommendations of how
Okay.
we're gonna totally implement
So by
this.
adopting it doesn't mean it's all fully implemented or whatever, it's just adopting the plan.
Saying that this is what you're going to do.
Yeah, what we're doing.
We'll have to
I
meet.
think I said aye, Mayor, sorry.
Any discussion, possible action to consider repealing C1, Chapter 18.26, and C2, Chapter 18.28, Ordinance 2021-14. Entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Amy.
And actually, this one's Jill's. Jill, thank you so much for hanging on with us tonight on this.
You're good. Okay. So the goal is to kind of clean up everything in the ordinances and update them as we go. Sorry, I'm tired. Let me pull this up. So the current ordinance of it's chapter 18.27. It's the commercials zone C1 and C2. The purpose of that zone when we created it was to replace the old C1, which is the 1826, and then the old C2, which is the 18.28. And that's what's before you guys to be repealed. If anybody is currently using or currently have a property that's under the ordinance of this 1826 and the 1828, they would be considered grandfathered, so they won't have to stop what they're doing. But we want to make sure we keep moving forward with the goals that we had in mind and repeal the old C1 and C2 as we were planning on it before. So we're just cleaning some of the old ordinances up is what the goal is.
Any members of the, oh, go ahead, Amy.
I just wanted to add to Jill's presentation. She did a great job, but part of this, and this goes back again to kind of transitioning over to that commercial, but there was some intent language in the ordinance that initially approved those changes to the zoning off 2700 and with the commercial to transition to a commercial focus. And so that language was already kind of in there to repeal this. This is just the formal action to take place to do that. So it kind of leads into former actions of the council.
And just so you guys know, we did the presentation for both, but you're gonna have to do a public hearing for each ordinance and make a motion for each ordinance, just so you guys know.
So for the C1, chapter 1826, and then the C2, chapter 1828. And
Right.
sorry, I didn't break those out. Yeah, we're piecing things
Are they
together.
two separate ordinances?
And Mayor, what's in, I apologize, I don't have the paperwork in front of me, but what is in those, what are we repealing?
Those are the old, those are the actual old zones that we repeat, that we basically, like Amy said, we when we approved the new ones, we put the language in there saying we're repealing the old ones or replacing the old ones, but we never took the formal action to actually remove.
And sorry, this is in your emailed packet. I didn't get a chance to reprint for the. But yeah, to the mayor's point, it's something that was in place before, and this is the main thing with securing the commercial base off of 2700. And so prior to, with these commercial zones, they allowed for those multifamily housing components, and this is really to limit that and to clean some of that up. But it's not just that, it's other uses as well to really focus in on the commercial element.
Is included in ordinance 2021-14? If so, why do we need to vote separate?
Jill, could you clarify that?
I'm sorry,
Maybe-
I totally missed that question, Councilman
Okay,
Bailey.
I'll repeat it. So we have on the agenda ordinance 2021-14. That's what was noticed. And so the question was whether or not both of the repealings, if those were included in that single ordinance they were, then why were the two separate actions required?
You, talking with Laurie, but when we had it go through, planning commission, we talked about it. And because they're two separate ordinances, we had to make the recommendation separate. I don't know if it's different with, city council, but with that ordinance, it does combine it, but I don't, that's just what we did with planning commission, because that's what me and Laurie found out with that portion.
And as long as it's noticed, I don't see why it would matter at all. And
Yeah, I think it can be based on preference of motion at this point. So,
I agree. Gibson, second by Bailey to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, back to our regular meeting.
That we repeal C1, Chapter 18.26 and C2, Chapter 18.28 as is outlined in Ordinance 2021-14.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Bailey, second by Yuri. Is this a roll call vote also?
for
Okay,
ordinances.
Bailey,
Yes.
Yuri,
Yes.
Marriott,
Yes.
Gibson.
Mayor, can I abstain on this? I don't fully understand
Okay.
what we're doing, so I don't want to vote.
Okay.
Thanks.
One abstention. Motion carries 3-2, 1 abstention. Okay, item 6 is a closed meeting.